Hi, everybody. I thought I'd just give you a bit of context before I went into the practicalities of the ISF via a direct payment. So we're Croydon Mencap. We're a charity, a small charity that just serves Croydon. So we are a charity in its own right. We work closely with Royal Mencap, but we are very separate and distinct. Um, so I'm the CEO. I've been CEO for 3 years. And as a charity, we didn't have it on our agenda or our strategy to enter into ISFs. However, it's not that I don't have any knowledge in that area. My previous history has been on in personalisation, personal health budgets, direct payments. I've worked with NHS England. I've kind of been in that arena for a while, and also been on the boards of charities that provide PBS support. So it wasn't necessarily something that we'd planned to do, but we were approached and we made a commitment to the family that we would explore it with them. And I felt fairly confident to do that given my experience. So to give you a bit of more context, so we are currently into around 9 months past the pilot stage into delivery as the plan states now with our ISF direct payment. So we work with a young, well, actually, he's not that young. He's, I'm going to offend people now, aren't I? Is he 47? Around that, which is, I don't know, you could say that was young or old, I don't know. But young, affable man with a learning disability and autism and complex behaviour needs. His power of attorney for his finances, well-being, everything, etc., is with his sister. He doesn't have living parents. He was known to Croydon Mencap because he joined some of our clubs, so we knew this man. So his sister approached us really out of despair. So they've had quite sort of traumatic historical experiences in care, one of which led to a court case with a provider for neglect, sexual abuse, financial abuse, etc. So they had been through the ringers. She approached us, I think, if you'd asked her, she did want to attend actually, but she's working, because she felt that our attitude was slightly different to what she'd experienced before. So she just put it out there and said, would you consider going on a bit of a journey with us? We have a direct payment for his 24-hour care and support. The provider, the existing provider is we are cancelling their services from this date. Do you want to explore this with us? So we have, and that's where it started. So the relationship we have with the sister is one of, and the individual that we support is one of equality and partnership. And we have the real true principle of transparency, honesty, and very good communication. That hasn't been easy because we've not always got it right. It has been a pilot, but she appreciated the fact that you don't always get things right, but all she cared about was communication, transparency, partnership work, shared problem solving, inclusion. All of those things meant more to her than getting it right. So his ordinary residence isn't in Croydon, it is in Nottinghamshire. So it's funded by a different council. So the first thing we did was look at the budget and look at the support plans. So there was really good support plans in place already, PBS support plans that had been informed by community learning disability team, by psychologists. So there were really good support plans in place, which really, really helps. So in our understanding, there was also really good communication tool. So they use Log My Care. So again, that was really good, and we just adopted that communication tool. So we sat with the family and looked at the budget, and we looked at excuse me, what his current life looked like, what wasn't working, what his aspirations were, what needed to change. The family was so proactive in his care and support and his aspirations anyway, that they'd built some fantastic networks in Crawley and established those already with him. So he already had access to a gig buddy, which I don't know if any of you have heard of, but Gig Buddies is a charity. He already had access to a adult learning course. He already had access to a volunteering job. So he had really good schedule of activities that he was very happy with. The main function that we contributed to was the recruitment of his 24-hour care support team. So this man has a deprivation of liberty safeguards court application in situ, because he is very vulnerable to exploitation, and he's also very vulnerable safety wise out in the community. Just practically things like walking across the road, he just has no awareness at all. So he has to have 24-hour care and support. So that was the main thing that we picked up that we could really help with. So we then worked through a process with the family and said, how involved do you want to be? They wanted to be very involved. So they were involved in the recruitment, the pulling together of the job description, the advert, the training, the induction. Sorry, the training, the induction, the selection. Sorry, I think there's someone that's not on mute. And we recruited and we trialed a live-in care model. That was important to the family because they felt like shift patterns had prevented this man from doing things before because of the turnover of shift times. And so it was quite limiting on his life. For example, he wanted to go and watch Iron Maiden in a concert or something like that. The previous provider just wasn't very accommodating with shift changes, which it is very complicated and difficult to manage if you're a care agency, which I do appreciate. So they wanted to try a living model first. So we tried that. We went through, I'd say, when I call it went through, we tried our very best with about 4 or 5 different members of staff. And what the family really loved more than anything was the fact that we listened to them when they had concerns. And we didn't pass people on their probation. So we had really high standards that were set by the family. And obviously we could witness ourselves when things weren't working well and when support plans weren't being followed, or when training and support and coaching and mentoring weren't making a difference. So we went through all that. And even though the idea of recruiting, going through all that again is just so time consuming, we respected that he needs the best staff. So it took us quite a while to get the right staff. And that's not easy. And all the time you're panicking because as a service, we're suddenly into 24-hour care 7 days a week, which you've never been in before. So, my life definitely went from, taking crisis calls at 6 a.m. on a Sunday, but now if we move along 9 months, we've got and established our on-call system. We've established a really good team. So we have 3 men that work with him, and they've now been working for at least 6 months consistently. We have, a WhatsApp appropriate, where we support the staff team. They work with the man to arrange the rotas. So they're kind of a self-led team in terms of some of the functions. So this team have a lot of autonomy as long as they're following the support plans and they're communicating really well. Yeah, so we developed a really robust agreement with the family that we wanted to have a very clear and explicit understanding of responsibilities and expectations. And we've gone through about 6 iterations of this agreement because we were learning as we went along, and we felt that things could be reworded or changed or added or taken out. So we've shared the agreement with Chris, and Chris made it a much better version, and I think he's shared it around his networks. So if anyone's interested in looking at it, yeah, so I'm going to stop talking, but we have developed a service brochure that describes the service. We haven't called it ISF because ISFs and acronyms are not very helpful when you're trying to live an ordinary life and communicate to ordinary people. So we've called it Support to Live, but it does describe our ISF principles and values within it. So if anyone would like to see it, I'll happily share that. We also did I had to write a case study and a risk analysis for our board, which I'm very happy to share, because obviously this is quite a huge undertaking for a charity to go into 24-hour care and support. Also, just to let you know, we had to evaluate very closely about whether we had to be CQC registered. And because he doesn't require personal care as such, as in, I think, Chris, you refer to it as in the line of sight or something like that. He does all his personal care behind closed doors in the privacy of his own room, in his bathroom. But sometimes, you need to positively prompt him to remind him that he hasn't brushed his teeth. So we can't actually register for CQC, which did worry me because I thought, if anything changed with his care and he suddenly needed personal care, what would we do? So I went back to Chris, and Chris said the beauty of ISFs is that you can carve out some of that budget to subcontract a CQC agency to cover some of those elements and rejig the budget. We are showing huge efficiencies with our ISF model because previously a lot of money was spent on recruitment. And now that we have a settled team and they've been consistent for 6 months, our recruitment budget line is showing an underspend. So we're now looking at going back to the family and saying, what else could we use this money for? Which is, really refreshing kind of experience. I mean, who has underspends in social care nowadays? So just to let you know that we've isolated this fund on our account, so it has its own stage reporting line, and so it has income and expenditure all detailed and accessible to the funder, which is the family, if ever they want to look at it, which they haven't requested yet. But I think, yeah, it's there if they need to. In terms of our contribution to our infrastructure, obviously it takes a lot of coordination, things like insurance, payroll, employment law advice, all of the usual things you see in a charity, which we do require a contribution towards because it is part of quality and safety. So we take quite a high amount. When I say high, we have a range, and it's 12% to 20%, depending on the complexity. This is how we're going to model it going forward. And we've assessed this man as quite complex. So, for example, we have safeguardings, we have complex behaviour. So, he has a history of aggression and he has shown aggression. So we have to put in quite a lot of support and coaching. and training around restrictive practice and all of those sort of things. So we have assessed it as a high end of our contribution scale, which is 20% towards the quality and safety. However, we could work with someone else, which could be less complicated, and we would make an assessment that that might be a lower contribution. That's how we work it out at the moment. His budget, the resource allocation for his budget, was worked out by the council in quite a traditional method, and that was basically 24 hours times an hourly rate. That's how they worked it out. And then we've obviously then taken that as a budget in its entirety and looked at his outcomes and needs and looked at that flexibly and imaginatively. Everything is legal, everything is affordable, and hopefully everything is effective. So I'm going to stop there and ask if you have any questions.
Michelle.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Michelle.
I was going to just ask, with kind of ISFs, what would you, if you were talking to another provider, what would you be saying was the kind of positives and negatives for the providers themselves?
So the positives, so depending on the provider, obviously I don't know who I'd be talking to.
No, okay,
but
fair enough.
I would definitely say that it is important that culturally, it is a mindset shift. The provider may be in that mindset shift already. So you've really got to be conscious about power dynamics. You've really got to be open, honest, transparent, and decision making has to be 100% shared. So you are constantly accountable, and so you should be, and to the family and the individual. Your priority is the family and the individual. So I have been in this industry for a while, and I know we all know that there's some less than good practice around that.
Yeah.
And when you get distorted power, you get distorted behavior, and you get lack of trust, and you get a difficult life. So this family has, and I don't think it's an isolated case, has come to us with a high level of mistrust, a high level of trauma. You know, we're talking about sexual abuse, financial abuse. Their brother, you know, when he was 14, he was near enough on the street, and he had alcohol issues because there was a lack of support. So yeah, you have to be very able to regulate your emotions and not become defensive when you're scrutinized by a family member, and actually welcome it, encourage it, appreciate it. Those sort of things are the mindset shift that I'm talking about.
Yeah. No, I can absolutely see. I just think that I think you're right. There are some providers that will potentially have not thought that through as part of their, we're interested in doing this. Because I've got a lot of people who put their hands up for something that I look at and think I'm not sure they fully understand what that will entail. So that's really helpful to hear, like your experience as a provider rather than what we might think sitting in a kind of local authority. And when you took it to directors, and you've kind of had to give the feedback to them, have they been positive in terms of looking at this as a pilot?
Yeah, so fortunately, our chair of our trustees is also the director of the NHS Local Authority Learning Disability and Autism community team. So he's just very on board with it and very tuned into the practice, but also very aware that it's not an easy undertaking, you know, when you've got someone that displays behaviours of, you know, violence and aggression and 24-hour care and support all of a sudden, which, you know, kind of, it was scary for all of us. We didn't go into it lightly. And I had to really analyse everything and report to the board extensively. But they passed it, and we're doing it. If you call something a pilot, they're a bit happier. But it's, I kept saying to them, even though it's called a pilot, you know, we are doing this. You know that, where the risks are there. So we had to look at risks report, all of that sort of stuff. Okay. Which is proper. We should do that anyway.
Yeah.
We have no idea how to grow it. So if I give you a bit of context, Croydon Council are at the moment, strategically wise, concentrating on their direct payments, and they're reissuing the tender for that service and sort of relooking at all of that. So they're aware of ISFs, but it's not on their agenda. So we imagine in the future they'll look to doing an ISF framework or something, but which is why we are kind of hoping to grow it as the ISF direct payment option. We are working with another person at the moment, but we're working from scratch. So he lives with his mum and he wants to move out. So we're going through the process of her from scratch about looking at getting a carers assessment. He has a learning disability and autism first, and then looking at supported living. And then we're literally going down the route of working our way through conversations with them. And you could probably package it up at the end as an ISF if you wanted to.
Excellent. Thank you, Catherine.
That's all right.
No, that's something, Catherine, just this is like an aptitude test for me, like a memory test of our conversations. But just to paraphrase this for people here, so my understanding is the council calculated the personal budget based on an agency rate. You've basically taken that budget and you act as the legal employer for what we would probably consider to be personal assistance. So you don't make profit per hour, but you're paying the personal assistance at a decent hourly rate and acting as a legal employer. And then you charge a range between 12 and 20% of the budget as a management fee for undertaking that role, basically. Is that broadly correct?
That is broadly correct. The resource allocation system is traditionally worked out hourly rate times 24 hours times 7 days a week. It comes out with an annual figure, which is paid monthly as a direct payment to the sister. We then invoice the sister for the whole amount and hold it for her. We then have done a separate budget with her, which we've done away with the 24-hour calculation. We just looked at the total and worked back from there. What does he need? What does he, what does it cost? What is it? We are a London living wage employer, so we have to pay our staff at least a London living wage, and we try to pay more where we can to acknowledge how important their role is. So we just fiddle with the budget lines and just see what's affordable, what like you would with any sort of budget. I hope that helps.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Stefan. Yeah, so.
Yeah, thank you. That was really interesting, and in particular that bit that you just touched on about taking on the employer role for personal assistance and how that dynamic works with how a organisation might normally work and when it's attached to a specific care plan. I'd be really interested in anything you can share around decisions and kind of how you put forward the case for it to be agreed, and just anything that helps with people solidify their thinking around how that dynamic works, including getting it straight in my head.
I mean, I think it's really interesting because originally direct payments were pushed through from the disability movement because they wanted more choice, control and flexibility generally. So you got the legislation in 1995, but and that was preferable to being in care homes. But fast forward this many years, you've got people that want choice, control and flexibility, but actually they don't want to be doing things like medical capabilities with PAs that have got cancer, or they don't want all of that. They want to influence, they want to be part of recruitment, but they don't want to have the responsibility of employer liability. Some people do, don't get me wrong, some people absolutely love all that. Some people, but some people want choice, control and flexibility without those horrible, they can be really horrible. We're all here probably supporting teams, and teams come with personal lives, issues, mental health, all of that, and that's the tricky bit for families, I think. So yeah, I think sorry, something you said triggered that thought, and I don't know if it was related now, but
it was, yeah. And I guess that's just an area that where someone doesn't want to take on that extent of control around or obligations around the employment role, and then working with an organisation such as yourself to say, I want you to take that role on for me, and they haven't got like someone else in their circle of support to take on the employee role for them. How you achieved that, what you had to kind of cases you had to make internally to square it off with the board and stuff. Anything around that would be really interesting.
Yeah, okay, we'll do. I'll send that over to Chris.
Thank you so much.
Brilliant. So this is about an alternative way. So the difference between you doing this and an agency, Catherine, do you think from a quality perspective is it the team around the person? Is it the rates of pay? What do you think is the biggest impact of this way of working for the person you're supporting?
So we are a non-agency, we're a charity. So we don't just purely deliver sort of time and task our support. So I think we're not fighting against like a culture of, delivering time and task allocated support. So we're quite, as a charity, we're quite conditioned into thinking outside the box already. We have to be quite inventive. So I think for us, it's been a little bit easier to maybe making assumptions to work in a particular way that is flexible and innovative. And it's not really innovative. I mean, I want a job. Okay, let's hope you get a job. It's not innovation. That's just life, isn't it? We're a bit more kind of, I don't know how to say it, just culturally kind of in the right mindset for this.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that agencies aren't. There are some fantastic agencies that do operate in very imaginative ways, and are rated as excellent by CQC because of that. They think outside of the box. So I assume will be lots of agencies that are very, very good positioned to do this work.
And I think for me, sorry, Kate, I know you're waiting, but was just coming to say it's about the opportunities probably with the VCS, some of this stuff, isn't it? To talk to the VCS locally about whether that's something that they're interested in doing, rather than always going to traditional agencies, to look at the ways that you can support the VCS into this space, really.
Yeah, I think with us, we also very clear that he won't use all of our services, and we won't pay for our services out of this budget, because then that sets his life up in very attached to us being a key player in his life. So we've made it very clear that we look at working with other community groups and services and offers. So he's got a sort of diverse sort of tapestry in his life. So yeah, that's another important factor and one of our sort of principles on this, because our relationship, the family have purchasing power, which is fantastic because we are accountable to them. And they may decide to cancel our contract at any point, and we don't want that to have an effect on this man. we don't want his life to be dependent on us necessarily. So that's another important thing to consider.
Let's come in, Kate.
Hi, Catherine. We
Hi,
had a
Kate.
conversation. Yeah, Chris put us together. Chris was there as well. It was really good. I couldn't remember what you'd said about whether the family topped up the funding from the council, and if you took that money on as well, or if that was sort of kept separate.
Okay, so we're going to go into a bit of detail, so I might lose people on this, but I'll try. So basically, basically there is a separation in funds. So we take on the care assessment budget, the personal budget. Then this man has 2 bank cards which are topped up by his sister who receives his benefits. So those pay for his weekly shop, his Metallica tickets, you know, his whatever he wants to do. So yeah, that's how that works. His loo rolls, you know, stuff like that. Does that help? So
Yes.
he has those cards in his wallet, which is kept in the PA's pocket because he may lose it. But but they're his cards. We don't have anything to do with that. But the PAs have support plans around that.
Yes.
And they talk to the sister if there's an overspend, a likely overspend, and she'll top it up.
Yeah. So they're literally supporting him to use it in the at the time of a transaction sort of thing. Yeah, good. Yeah, I think everyone on this call likes that kind of detail.
All right, okay. Yeah, all of this detail is in the agreement because we want it to be totally understood by all parties. We don't want any murky boundaries.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so obviously you've been able to use the budget more efficiently as part of that. What's the situation with unused funds and stuff? Are you finding that you have to give those back to the council asking for them back, or are you just carrying on and just looking at different ways of using them?
The council, I mean, we're only 8-9 months in, so the council, we anticipate, as many councils do, that they don't want lots of money sitting in people's bank accounts. It's just pointless, isn't it? So we are rebudgeting at the moment and looking at our underspend on recruitment and looking at if there's anything else that could be spent on to meet the outcomes of the support plan. And I suppose if there isn't anything else, we will go back to the council and say, or the sister will, because she's got that relationship, not us, in the review process, that they can reduce that budget.
So roughly what sort of percentage that is?
What, of a reduction?
Yeah.
I don't know. We're about to undertake a budgeting review, so I can probably tell you more about that after. Yeah. It's just quite interesting because I suppose there was a big turnover of staff before, and they had quite a high level of recruitment cost, and they used an agency, I think, to support with recruitment. So it's quite expensive as well. So yeah, it's now sitting there unused. So yeah, we'll have a re-look at the budget with the family.
I mean,
I'm not sure if that's common, so I don't want people to get excited about a way of saving money. Croydon Mencap do this and they save the council 16%.
I think it's just a natural evolution from having a stable workforce. It benefits from having a stable workforce.
It's just so great. Yeah.
I think for me, one of the things that fascinates me about this as an option is that, you know, I hear from a lot of families about their PA rate, the rate that their direct payment rate from the council is like insufficient to basically be able to recruit PAs and retain. So then what happens is they end up going over to an agency, and the agency then is, you know, let's say charging 20 quid an hour, and so the council gets locked into paying more per hour than potentially they could have done if they'd raised the PA rate slightly. But by giving that £20 an hour to you, there is the potential that not all of that funding will get used, and you'll be able to do it more creatively, and you can work within that. So this sort of feels like a no-brainer from a council perspective to have organisations like yourself in an area, because it's not going to cost any more than it would have done as a commission service. You're obviously delivering great outcomes for this person. Your continuity of care sounds like it's better. You know, you've got all of those benefits, and there's that potential you might not use all the funding. Whereas if you're paying a provider in a traditional commissioned arrangement, you know, they would keep all the funds. So it's it's another great option, I think, for people to keep a direct payment but still get the benefits from ISF, really.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's very true. The other thing important to note is that we are not for profit. So a lot of providers are profit making companies. They are quite huge companies. We're not for profit, we're a charity, but we definitely aren't for loss. So we do cover our costs. The true representation of what it is to deliver this in this way is reflected in the budget, because, you know, we're not for loss. We have to look at that very carefully. Charities can often get into situations where they subsidise stuff and they get into all sorts of trouble. So I do like that, not for profit, but not for loss.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. I've worked with quite a few charities over the years who've been subsidising loss-making hourly rates, you know, and the long-term trajectory for that is to go bust.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, absolutely. Cool. Okay. So, just give people a chance. Has anybody got any other reflections or questions they want to ask? Or we've got Catherine on the call.
I'm very happy to put my email address if anyone wants to email me and ask any questions that they haven't thought of right now. I'm very happy to also jump on a Teams meeting if anyone wants to unpick it a bit more with me. Very happy, so I'll do that. But thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Really appreciate your time, and I think that's a lovely offer. And I suspect there'd be quite a few community organisations out there that would, you know, could mirror what you've done in communities, but would need that kind of overview of how it works, the practical side of it. So maybe we could come back and revisit how you're getting on, perhaps in a year or so. It'd be really interesting just to know about a bit more of the detail and what's happened then with the support arrangement over time and those kind of things. So
yeah, more than happy
brilliant.
to.
Thank you, much appreciated. Cool. Okay, so I think what time are we in? Oh, okay, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. So just before you guys go, the next meetup I think we're going to bring in an organisation from Essex that is a day supports provider, and it's, we think, probably the only example of a day supports provider doing ISFs at the moment, and he's doing some wonderful work with the guys they support, and has just been given his first third-party personal health budget to manage as well. So that's quite interesting. Hopefully, I find that quite interesting. Hopefully, you guys will as well. So we're going to bring Andrew Denny along to the next meetup, which I think will probably be, I can't remember without looking at my diary, but it will probably be December, January time. Yeah, other than that, if nobody's got anything else they want to raise, any AOB or questions, I will give you 5 more minutes to go and have a bio break before your next meeting. Good to see you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.